The fire danger rating is extreme, with a total fire ban remaining in force for all of New South Wales. State operations clear and standing by.
Summer in Australia. The warm winds draw people to the outdoors. For most, it's time spent by the beaches and waterways, enjoying barbecues or taking in the sights and sounds of the bush. Miles from the coast, the baked earth takes on the appearance of a shimmering sea. The soil's so hot it can reach 52 degrees and burn bare skin. Bush and paddocks, lush and green, can turn brown and brittle almost overnight. It's now the fires brought to life. Walls of flame so ferocious they can make anyone who feels their sear go weak. A choking terror just being near them. But there is a force of men and women prepared to put their fears aside to stop the fires claiming homes, animals and lives. They come from all walks of life. Without being asked twice, they'll put their jobs and family lives on hold to answer the call any hour of the day or night, to serve as a rural firefighter. In 2001, the International Year of the Volunteer, 250,000 Australians serve as volunteer firefighters. It's also the centenary of the first volunteer brigade ever established in Australia, a celebration of community service and spirit. The image of a firefighter looking exhausted, surrounded by smoke and dousing himself in water to relieve the heat is regarded internationally as a snapshot of Aussie determination. In just the first 2 months of this year's fire season, volunteers in New South Wales have answered more than 3,000 fire calls. Many of them gave up Christmas with their families to battle the flames.
The speed and intensity was devastating. This huge wall of flame became a mini tornado. Homes in its path had no chance. 6 alone in Cross Street, Warramoo, were engulfed. The dangers of living in the mountains all too apparent. Watching from above, it was mesmerising. A local with just a hose coming at him, walls of flame. But remarkably, his house seemed to survive. Up the road in Yellow Rock, firefighters were surrounded. Flames danced everywhere in the unpredictable winds. Crews doing all they could.
Power line! Line the next one, I can't help him, mate.
They lost the battle to save this home in Singles Ridge Road. Residents were ordered inside.
Scary. In a word.
The area completely surrounded. Helicopters brought in water, trying to splash the inferno. It made little difference. Fireballs have ripped through hectares of forest, and authorities admit it's some of the worst they've ever seen.
This is probably as bad as it gets for us in terms of threat to property. It is coming into a major urban area now, and it's moving with a large amount of speed. It's going to mean that all crews will have to be brought in to just simply protect property. There's little or nothing you can do to stop a fire moving with this degree of speed.
A ring of smoke and flame has now surrounded Sydney for more than 24 hours. Late yesterday, the same dramatic scenes, desperate attempts to save family homes. Fire encircled this house at St Clair. Defending it, a small team from Liverpool's Rural Fire Service. They won, eventually beating back the flames. The blaze had come roaring down from the mountains, engulfing homes in Warragamba, Wallacia and Silverdale.
I've never seen anything like this. It's hell. It's just like living. It's hell.
Whole buildings were swallowed, this supermarket gone in just minutes. But the flames were hit and miss, levelling some homes, sparing their neighbours.
She was wet down. Just luck, mate, just luck.
While some worried about property, others feared for loved ones. This woman frantic to find her daughter.
We've got her. We've got her. She's okay. She's with. There's nothing wrong with her. But she's with the ambulance driver, and also all the other kids are there as well.
Lives endangered and lifestyles destroyed. Those on the front line believe arson is to blame.
Sadly, it's played a very large part. We can pinpoint the number of fires which are as a result of lightning or transport accident.
These fires are considered the worst since records were kept, unstoppable, consuming everything in their path, and most believed to have been started by humans. But while dramatic and ferocious, on average 98% of all bushfires are extinguished by volunteers before they do serious damage. It's the other 2% of fires, the high-intensity blazes they call the big ones, that have led to widespread damage and deaths. New Year's Day 1998, a team of firefighters from Wingello on the Southern Highlands was surrounded by a thunderous firestorm that only minutes before had been calm. David Quinlimmon tried to drive the crew's fire truck clear. He died turning his vehicle away from the main heat blast to protect his colleagues. They survived, but still carry the scars. This type of fire is often given human qualities. The way flames dance and can mesmerise, many say the flames mysteriously discriminate, destroying some homes while leaving others next door completely untouched. But every fire is a teacher. Investigators using science to work out how it started, spread, and what fueled the flames. This information forms the basis of survival techniques, informing homeowners of simple measures to protect and minimise the risk to their properties. It's also increased demand for Australian volunteer firefighters worldwide. In recent years, Aussie specialists have helped put out massive fires in Indonesia and the wild forest blazes of the United States.
The Australian Reinforcement's 69 veteran firefighters arriving today in Boise, Idaho to answer America's call for help.
Were you surprised when you got the call?
Yeah, a little. It was only 2 days ago.
So not much time to prepare?
No, none at all. It was basically 36 hours and on the plane.
They're desperately needed to relieve American crews exhausted after battling raging fires for the past 3 months.
I think we consider them to be some of the best in the world. Just look at some of your fires, you know, if you look at some of the fires you've had in Australia and New Zealand.
But while their skills are wanted internationally, back home volunteers are being called on to take on more roles in their communities. Helping people in car wrecks, putting out house fires, assisting search parties for missing people, and emergency repairs to homes following floods and storms. But it's fighting bushfires where they feel most comfortable, and that's won them the respect and admiration from every community they serve. When Europeans first landed on Australian shores, they saw fires in the distance. Fires that have been burning for some time. There was such a haze hanging over the country, Captain James Cook described Australia as the continent of smoke. The first people of Australia had for thousands of years harnessed the power and energy of fire. In 1889, Ernest Giles wrote of his travels in Central Australia.
The natives were about burning, burning, ever burning. One would think they were of the fabled salamander race and lived on fire instead of water. Every tribe used fire to clear land, prompt plant regeneration, and as a hunting tool. The flames and smoke scaring animals towards waiting warriors.
However, the flames and smoke not only frightened the wildlife, but the new settlers as well. They'd fought to keep fires out of their European villages, towns and cities, especially the English following the Great Fire of London. They neither understood bushfires nor recognised their role in the landscape. As the population spread, more bush was cleared to open the land for farming, tall grass paddocks perfect for a fire racing ahead of a strong wind. Faced with complete crop devastation, neighbours banded together to help each other stop the fires. With few resources, bush ingenuity helped win the battles. Unknowingly, these loose groups formed the basis of what was to become the Rural Fire Service. Volunteer brigades sprung up wherever a town was born.
Can I come too? No, son.
While brigades were forming in the goldfields of Victoria and in southern New South Wales before the turn of the century,
all right. Come on, get in.
it would take a series of disastrous fires to spur legislative and funding changes to rapidly expand the number of both volunteers and brigades. In 1851, Tasmanians awoke to chunks of ash and burning embers falling from a cloud-covered sky. Many thought their towns were on fire, but it was debris from Victoria, blown in across Bass Strait. Known as Black Thursday, it was a wake-up call for the entire country.
The fire destroyed the face of the colony over a space of 300 by 150 miles. Farms, flocks and herds by tens of thousands were destroyed. Also, numbers of people. So rapidly did it travel that men on horseback galloped before it till their horses fell dead. Herds of cattle were seen running over the country in a frantic state, and birds and whole flocks fell suffocated into the flames.
Something had to be done. In 1896, the first organised brigade was established in the tiny New South Wales town of Berrigan, close to the Victorian border. This was a direct result of fires in the district. Other towns soon followed suit.
From all ranks of the community come the men of the volunteer fire brigade, professional men, tradesmen, farmers. They all unselfishly give service and often risk their lives to combat the fire menace, Australia's greatest summer tragedy.
Brigades continued to grow through the Depression. The fire station, a place where families could bond, share experiences, and despite shortages, communities always rallied to ensure their firefighters were fed after putting out a blaze. While Australians had witnessed extreme fires, nothing before would compare to Black Friday, the 13th of January 1939. Temperatures in Adelaide and Melbourne reached 45 and 47 degrees inland. The humidity dropped below 10%. It was dry. Gusty desert winds took what moisture was left.
And that was the finish of that fire for the night. We went home and we sat in raking all around the back of the stable, raking up the leaves and rubbish, prepared for it coming next morning. We thought when the sun rose it'd get windy again. I let the dogs go and we raked up the leaves. It was early in the morning. And we were surprised to go over by the garden fence when the wind blew the leaves over there. We had to bag them and put them in the shed, and the fowls was all dead along the fence with the heat. And there was no fire.
And that was early in the morning?
Yes, about 8 o'clock the fowls was all dead. So things were looking serious, things we never saw before. So we began to take stock of things. My father was in a panic, and you could see from up at the woodshed every day whether the fire started up or not.
It only took a spark and in no time fires were seemingly everywhere. Large tracts of South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, the ACT and Tasmania were alight. At the time, everyone seemed to know someone who'd been affected by the fires. Southern New South Wales and Victoria fared the worst. 71 lives were lost in Victoria, 69 timber mills, millions of acres of forest, whole townships were obliterated.
At midday, it was dark as night. Steel girders and machinery were twisted by heat, as if they had been of fine wire. Great pieces of burning bark were carried by the wind, setting regions ablaze. Such was the force of the wind, that in many places, hundreds of trees of great size were blown clear of the earth.
In the wake of the 39 fires came the outbreak of World War II. Not only were there enemy forces to contend with, but bushfires were also considered a foe that could severely damage the war effort.
The men at our battlefront fight to keep Japan at bay. You on the home front are at war with an equally ruthless enemy, fire. Does your carelessness risk destruction of vital war supplies? Weaken Australia's fulfillment of her obligation to her allies? Endanger the lives and properties of those left to fight the battle of the land? Do you help the enemy? Wake up and think before it is too late.
The war also helped the volunteers expand.
The job of bushfire brigades is firstly to confine the fire within a limited space between fire breaks, and secondly, to put it out. Neither of these tasks is possible without adequate equipment. Fortunately, this brigade has a sufficiency of everything. Although a city water supply is not available, it is surprising what can be done with knapsack sprays and small hoses sensibly directed. These men have got to hold the fire's edge from spreading, while the central flames burn themselves out. The disaster of widespread bushfires can be avoided, even though they come from unavoidable causes. It means foresight and work, the preparation of fire breaks, the organization of firefighters. There is still much to be done in this direction before Australia can be considered anything like prepared against danger from fire.
The end of World War II and brigades struggling for funds snapped up thousands of surplus military vehicles. The big-wheeled trucks and Land Rovers, ideal for off-road work and an ability to carry big quantities of water. The old war workhorses could be found in some of the most remote corners of the country, all of them maintained in near-perfect showroom condition by volunteers. The war also brought a new tool, planes and helicopters. From the air, fires could be spotted kilometres away. This gave volunteers the ability to rally surrounding brigades quicker and move on the fires before they could spread. The end of the war also rapidly boosted Australia's population as the cities grew. They cut further into bushland areas, exposing more communities to risk. Over the next 40 years, volunteers were called on to try and save entire towns under threat. Every few years, the fires appear to grow bigger, each one dubbed a Black Day because charcoal and ash were quite often the only things left. One of the worst, Black Tuesday, February 7, 1967 in Hobart. But Ash Wednesday, February 16, 1983, changed the rural fire service nationwide forever.
The fire started at Deans Marsh and, whipped by a 50-knot northerly wind, just raced through the Otway Ranges. The coastal town of Lorne was quickly surrounded by flames, so quickly that everyone in the town headed for the beach, hoping there was enough sand between the burning bush and the water. 2 fire trucks got into Lorne before the fire hit. All access roads were then cut and no other trucks have been able to get in. Reports from Lorne are sketchy, but it is known that at least 30 homes there have been destroyed. From the 7 News helicopter, the whole of the Otways seemed to be on fire. Flames were leaping hundreds of metres into the air. Houses in the path of the flames just exploded from the heat. We saw at least 10 homes burning on the hills above Aries Inlet. That town has been evacuated, and the flames were only a kilometre away and being pushed forward by the strong wind. It was impossible to fly to Lorne to see what the situation was there. Smoke, heat and the turbulence made it too dangerous. From Lorne, the coast along to Anglesea has been evacuated. Those people who couldn't get out were standing along the beachfront. Firefighters are helpless at the moment. The front of the fire is too great to contain. The dense bush of the ranges is so dry the flames are just leaping forward, and everyone is retreating in front of this terrible fire.
Fires stretched across 2 states, Victoria and South Australia. 5,000 volunteers turned out to help, but an ageing fleet of trucks meant only 30% of them made it to the scene. The rest broke down, leaving homeowners to fend for themselves.
In the southeast, a fire burning along a 120-kilometre front claimed an entire family of 5 trapped in their car, and a timber yard fueled the flames near Mount Gambier. By late this afternoon, however, most of the fires were under control, but several spot fires had broken out again in the Adelaide Hills.
Reporter Murray Nicol was one of those who helplessly watched his own house burn to the ground.
At the moment, I'm watching my house burn down. I'm sitting out on the road in front of my own house where I've lived for 13 or 14 years. It's going down in front of me. The roof is falling and it's in flames, and there's nothing I can do about it. Absolutely nothing. There's been a fire unit here from Summertown pumping water till we ran out, and the flames are in the roof, and God damn it, it's just beyond belief. My own house, and everything around is black. There are fires burning all around me, and the front section of my house is blazing. The roof has fallen in. My water tanks are useless. There is absolutely nothing I can do about it. All my belongings, Frankie's taken the children down to town. The last I saw of Frankie, she was at the Summertown, at the Green Hill fire station, manning the radio. In the car were our personal files, and with our children, with friends downtown, with a bunch of photographs. The rest is a total write-off. The house is just going before my eyes.
Murray, if your wife Frankie is listening, is there anything that a message that you would like to give to her now?
I think Frankie will be manning the CFS radio. That's provided she's all right. We don't even know if the fire station still exists. If Frankie is listening, I'm okay. Houses can be replaced. The kids are okay. And if you're okay, well, I guess we just have to build again.
It was heartbreaking. Every level of government realised the volunteers needed more than just a pat on the back.